and this is the UFC's top 5 hottest prospects. I know the intro's a little bit different, guys, but for this video, I just want to introduce you to 5 people that are going to be, dominating the UFC and the MMA media headlines for years to come. They've got a lot of potential. Some of these guys have, Conor McGregor potential or more. We know Conor McGregor's, took the MMA world and just the world by storm as he transcended MMA. But these are all the guys that are in mixed martial arts that have potential to not only be champions, but also be crossover stars as mixed martial artists. Now, there's an honorable mention. I could have did a top 10 list. We could have hit like the Mackenzie Derns of the world and stuff like that. But I just feel like when we're crunching it into a top 5, these are the people that made the list. So with that being said, let's start at number 5. We've got Alexander Volkov, who just beat Fabricio Verdum via knockout at UFC London. Alexander Volkov moved to 4-0 in the UFC, and now he's 30-6 as a mixed martial artist. With this win over Fabricio Verdum, he's moved to possibly the #1 contender in the heavyweight division, and he could be looking at a title shot as soon as this next fight, or he might have to fight one more person in the process. But Alexander Volkov, on his way to his Fabricio Verdum fight, he beat Roy Nelson, Stefan Struve, and Timothy Johnson, all UFC veterans that are high level as far as the heavyweight division is concerned. Now with the win over Fabricio Verdum, Alexander Volkov is on everybody's radar, and he's going to be coming for a #1 contender fight or a title fight soon. Now, Fabricio Verdum was the #1 contender. If you take Francis Ngannou out of the picture, who just lost the title fight, Fabricio Verdum was arguably 9-1 in his last 10 fights in the heavyweight division, not to mention one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. He's fought the likes of Fedor Emelianenko, beat him. It was a huge upset at the time, submitted him, one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu heavyweights to ever grace mixed martial arts. Fabricio Verdum is a seriously credentialed heavyweight, and Alexander Volkov was the underdog going into the fight. But he's very experienced and only 29 years old, so Alexander Volkov came in, he did what he needed to do to get the knockout in the 4th round, and now he's going to be one of the #2 and #1 contenders in the UFC heavyweight division, and he's only 29 years old. Now, you might think 29 years old is a little old for a prospect, but you have to take into consideration this is the heavyweight division where fighters fight until they're 40, 41, 42. So Alexander Volkov coming in and getting the big win over Fabricio Verdum is just a sign of things to come. The guys before this he was fighting also had notable names: Stefan Struve, Roy Nelson. So Alexander Volkov, I don't know if he'll ever be like a crossover big pop star like a Conor McGregor with 1 million followers, but he could very well be a heavyweight champion for whatever that's worth. And for that, he makes number 5 on the UFC's top 5 hottest prospects list. Coming in at number 4, we have the last stylebender, Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya is an up-and-coming middleweight who's also known as #Non-Jones from the John Jones comparisons that he received after his UFC debut, which was a TKO victory in the 2nd round over Rob Wilkinson. Now, Israel Adesanya is undefeated as a mixed martial artist and a professional at 12-0, and he's got a lot of eyes on him right now in the sport. Recently, he drew a lot of ire because in his post-fight celebration, he said, this is my yard, and I'm pissing all over it. Just marked my territory. He got into a little trouble for that, but hey, with that being said, this guy's definitely got some character and some personality, and that's also why he made the prospect list, because if he can come in and get a couple more spectacular finishes or nice wins under his belt, this kid has got a lot of star power potential. John Jones is going through his troubles, and as much as he wants to be separated from John Jones, I think he'll continue to draw those comparisons. But with that being said, Israel Adesanya is coming in at number 4 on the list. I would speak more on him, but he's only got 1 fight in the UFC, unlike a lot of the other prospects on this list. So Israel Adesanya is coming in at number 4. He could have a very, bright future in the UFC, but we'll see what happens with his next win, or his next fight, I should say, versus Marvin Vettori. We've only seen him fight 1 time in the UFC, so we'll see what happens. Now, coming in at number 3, we have Sugar Sean O'Malley. Sugar Sean O'Malley, man, you can compare him to a lot of the greats as well. He's got some Conor McGregor and some Nate Diaz in him. Think about that, yo. Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, two of the biggest stars in the sport to date, do a fusion dance, and you got my boy Sugar Sean O'Malley. He's already got 3 fights in the UFC if you count his Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series fight versus Alfred Kashashkashigan. I don't know how to say his last name, so I hope that was pretty close. But he got a first-round KO victory in that fight, made the world go crazy. Everyone watching the fight, including Snoop Dogg, O'Malley, O'Malley. And so he got a lot of exposure after that fight. He came in, made his UFC debut versus Tyrion Ware. It was a very unique performance. It was an entertaining style. He wants the finish, but he got the decision victory. In the second round, it looked like he might have been a little bit out of energy, but he still managed to, find a second wind and win the third round in a big way. And you can see on the stats there, he had a great performance versus Tyrion Ware. Then, most recently, Sean O'Malley fought Andre Sukumthoth. Now, that performance also went viral, not because of a crazy knockout, which is what Sean O'Malley does aim for, but in the third round, Sean O'Malley hurt his foot. He looked like he might have broken his ankle. Turns out it might have been a fracture that he re-aggravated. But still, he was in pain. He was hopping on one foot. And it was clear that Sean O'Malley was almost unfit to fight because he was on one leg. Andre Sukumthoth in the third round took him down, which allowed Sean O'Malley to make it, survive to the end of the fight. And Sean O'Malley won the decision, which he definitely earned. He was winning the strikes in the fight. You know what I'm saying? As far as the first and second round is concerned, he was outstriking Andre Sukumthoth. And so Sean O'Malley, earned the victory, but almost lost because of an injury. So with that being said, Sean O'Malley, outside of the cage, he's a good trash talker. He's got a lot of personality. He's got the weed stuff on lock, as far as he's already got his own strain of weed and stuff like that. He's a very avid pot smoker and cannabis, you know what I'm saying, as far as the medical use and stuff like that. So he can, branch off that way. So Sean O'Malley's got a lot of potential in the UFC as well. And he's already been tested more than, like an Israel Adesanya. This guy's got 2 UFC fights and a Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series fight. So we'll see what happens with Sean O'Malley. But he's makes number 3 on the UFC's brightest prospects list. He's got a lot of potential inside and outside of the octagon. Not to mention, all of that I already just said. He's also got a very exciting fighting style. So with that being said, a lot of potential for Sean O'Malley. Let's move to number 2 on the list, which is Bryan Ortega. Just knocked out Frankie Edgar. First person to finish Frankie Edgar. Scored a big knockout in the first round. Bryan Ortega has been doing nothing but getting better and better and better as a UFC fighter. And he's still young, only 27 years old, undefeated, 14-0, about to be fighting for a title. Bryan Ortega has the potential to become a superstar with the victory over Max Holloway, and if he became the UFC champion, 15-0. Bryan Ortega's already a star, man, and he's got his head in the right place after each of his most recent victories. He's talking about the Bryan Ortega Foundation just to help other kids, coming from where he came from and stuff like that. So Bryan Ortega, man, I couldn't say enough good things about this guy. I think he's got a great future ahead of him. If you look at his UFC fights, man, he's just constantly improving. He had a little hiccup in his UFC debut, but after that, he earned third round submission after third round KO after third round submission after third round KO. And all of those fights, Bryan Ortega might have been down or even on the scorecards before he got the finish, but he didn't leave it in the hand of the judges. He earned the finish. And then after those third round finishes, he got a second round submission over Cub Swanson. Almost a first round submission, but Cub Swanson survived to the end of the bell, and Bryan Ortega got the submission in the second round. Then most recently, a first round KO over Frankie Edgar. Now Bryan Ortega's gonna be getting a title shot, and he could be one of, you know what I'm saying? He just shooting to the moon as far as, his prospect level. He's very young, could be a champion soon. So Bryan Ortega, man, he's the number 2 prospect on the list. He could be number 1 on the list as far as what he's already proven in the UFC. He very well could be number 1 on the list. But when we're talking about number 1 on the list, I'm bringing in the gorilla, Darren Till, who's got, champ aspirations. Darren Till is a guy coming in. He's a light heavyweight fighting at welterweight. And you know, I know he says that. And honestly, this #1 spot could go to Bryan Ortega or Darren Till. You know, it's neck and neck. Bryan Ortega's proved more with his most recent victory over Frankie Edgar, but Darren Till also has that victory over Donald Cerrone that really put him on a lot of people's radar. And Darren Till, his fights in the UFC, I mean, when he wasn't fighting the Donald Cerrones of the world, he was beating guys, you know, and earning his spot. I believe Darren Till might be 4-0 or 5-0 in the UFC at this point. He's 16-0 and 1 overall, so he's got the most wins of a lot of these prospects on the list. He's only 25 years old. He's got multiple countries behind him. You know, he's from Liverpool, England, but he moved to Brazil, learned how to speak Portuguese, and you know what I'm saying? And that can only help him as a mixed martial artist as far as his jiu-jitsu and his grappling is concerned. I mean, he's got the fighting style, the trash talk, the confidence, the worldly support, the global support. Multiple countries fucking love this guy already. 16-0. He can fight. He's a welterweight. He's talking about the middleweight division. He's talking about the light heavyweight division. Darren Till has potential to fucking be bigger than anything we've saw. We don't even know how big he could be. But the thing is, he would have a lot of things would have to fall into place. He's got to pass the test. Whenever Conor McGregor, guy I'm about to bring up, whenever Conor McGregor was in these people's shoes, he had to pass the test. Now let me bring Conor McGregor up, because for any of these people that you think shouldn't be on the list, let's look at Conor McGregor. When Conor McGregor made his UFC debut, which is what we're going over with a lot of these guys, it was Marcus Brimage, Max Holloway, Diego Brandao. This was not the Max Holloway you know, so that's why I say these guys are prospects. At this time is when Conor McGregor was a prospect. If you would have looked at Conor McGregor back when he had these 3 names on his resume, you might not have thought, oh, he's going to be the next fucking Conor McGregor. But that's why he was a prospect back then. After that, Conor McGregor had to start passing the serious test. You know, he had to fight Dustin Poirier, Dennis Seaver, and then really Chad Mendes. So what I'm saying is, yeah, these guys might not have the names on the resume, you know, to make them stars yet. Bryan Ortega's there. But at one point, neither did Conor McGregor. You know what I'm saying? So keep your eye on these guys on this list. I mean, we got Israel Adesanya. We've got Alexander Volkov, Sean O'Malley, Bryan Ortega, and of course coming in at #1, Darren Till. I have a feeling all 5 of those guys are going to be names that we hear about, you know, in 2019, 2018, 2020 MMA. Now, of course, any one of those guys, you know, they're still young in their game. They've got to pass the test like Conor McGregor did. When you fight Chad Mendes, whenever people are saying, we don't know about your wrestling yet, you haven't had to fight a wrestler yet, the UFC's protecting you. Whenever people start saying that and you fight the Chad Mendeses, you got to pass that test. A lot of these guys are exciting fighters because, yeah, some of them are strikers. You look at Sean O'Malley, you look at Israel Adesanya, and you say, okay, yeah, these guys are really exciting strikers and they got fun fighting styles, but can they beat the toughest wrestlers in the division? We don't know. So that's why, hopefully, while they're becoming big stars and while they're just prospects, that's what they're constantly working on. They know they're starting to be, the eyes are starting to pay attention to them. Fans are starting, you know, they're getting more fans day by day now that they have this, you know, radar on them. They're on everybody's radar. So now it's time to work on that wrestling. So whenever you do have to fight for a title, or you do have to fight one of these legends of the division, when you're on the way to the title, you can pass the test like Conor McGregor did when he fought Chad Mendes, or when he fought Jose Aldo, or when he fought Eddie Alvarez, and you can really reach your full potential as one of the hottest prospects in the UFC, which is what these 5 fighters are. You know, we had coming in at #5, Alexander Volkov. Coming in at #4, of course, we had Israel Adesanya. #3, Sugar Sean O'Malley. #2, Bryan Ortega. And #1, Darren Till. All 5 of those fighters are guys that I've got my eye on, and we could have did a top 10 list. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. This was just the top 5. It is 2 in the morning. I gotta go to my little cousin's fucking funeral tomorrow. So you guys know I do this every single day. So this might be the only daily upload for today. But hey, man, I had to get one out. I don't know what's going on tomorrow. So thank you guys for checking this out. It is what it is. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. somebody asked me to do like a top 10 heavyweights in the UFC right now. I'll probably do that list for you guys. I don't know if I'll be able to do it tomorrow, but the day after. So thanks for checking this out. I'm out. And as always, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell right next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking D-O-double-G.